Right, in today's video, we're going to learn how to derive the quadratic formula, and at the same time, also we're going to do an example on how we can apply the quadratic formula to solve an equation. All right, so before we do this very heavy, contents-based, dry derivations of the quadratic formula, let's have some light moment. All right, can you make a guess of this character that I've just shown on the screen? Right, if you can't, if you can't tell, that means my drawing is actually not that what do you call that? Not that fantastic. Never mind. Let's try to answer this question. How does Darth Vader prefer his toast? Well, the answer is he prefer it on the dark side. Right, but not to worry, we're not going to the dark side. Okay, we're going to derive this quadratic formula, and it's on the bright side because after you know the derivations and the applications of it, it's going to help you score points in your exam. Right. So what we're going to do is we will be using the completing the square method to derive the quadratic formula. So let's start by writing down the quadratic equation. So the quadratic equation is the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, and a is not equal to 0. Right, I've been asking these questions numerous times already, and I believe you'll be able to answer it yourself. What happens if a is equal to 0? Right, why is it that we need to say a is not equal to 0? All right, so what is step number 1? Step number 1 is divide by a on both sides of the equation. So every terms on the left divide by a, every terms on the right divide by a. Yes, and you arrive at x squared plus b over ax plus c over a equals to 0, because 0 divided by a is 0. Okay, so I'm going to show you why is it that I can write bx over a as b over a times x. If you look at the notes that I've shown here, so bx over a, actually you can break it up into two fractions. Okay, so the two fractions are b over a multiplied by x over 1. X divided by 1 is x. So basically, you can just write x as x over 1. Okay, so b over a times x over 1 actually gives you bx over a. Right, so you can actually write it as b over a times x, because x over 1 is x. Why do you want to do that? Okay, later we'll show you in the steps as follow, the reasons for having to express bx over a as b over a x. Right, let's continue. So what is step number 2? Step number 2 is to subtract c over a on both sides of the equation. So what it means here is you just minus c over a on both sides. All right, then let's see what we have. So on the left hand side, your c over a minus c over a, so your c over a will be gone, right? So on the right hand side, you will get negative c over a, because 0 minus c over a will give you negative c over a. Okay, so what is step number 3? So step number 3 is slightly harder, because you will have to apply the completing the square method. Right. So we go to the next slide. Right, so we understand that this is not an easy derivations, involve a lot of algebraic manipulation, but please do not give up. Right, we will be reaching our goal very soon. Right, so let's write down what we have last stopped at. Okay, so what's the next step we need to do? We will have to complete the square for x squared plus b over ax. Right, so we need to take the coefficients of x, which is positive b over a. Usually positive b over a, we just take it as b over a. All right, we don't write plus b over a, just b over a. So what do we do with it? Yes, we divide it by 2 and then we square it. And I'm going to write 2 as a fraction, 2 over 1, because in the next step, we will have to flip the division sign to multiplication sign. We have to change the division sign to multiplication, and we will have to flip the fractions 2 over 1 into half. All right. So what is the next step? Yes, the next step is to add square of b over 2a. That means bracket b over 2a close bracket square to both sides. Right, so this is what we get. And if you were to recall, I've done a video on completing square. All right, so the next step is to convert this right into a perfect square. And yeah, all right, so and then we need to manipulate this guy. All right, we need to convert these 2 fractions into a single fraction. But before that, I've just shown you how we can simplify bracket b over 2a close bracket square. I've just shown you here how we can simplify it. Right, so we rearrange it, 2a times 2a, we write it as 2 times 2 times a times a. Right, so we put the numbers together and put the variables together, so it's easier to see the multiplication. All right, so the next step is, okay, and then we're going to combine the 2 fractions on the right hand side, yes, into one single fraction. So the common denominator will be 4a squared. Oh yeah, we rearrange it first. Is usually I prefer to write positive and then followed by negative. You know, this one is the same as, like, you know, negative 2 plus 3, right? You can write it as 3 minus 2, right? Because the answer you get will be the same. Negative 2 plus 3, it's 1, and 3 minus 2 is also 1. So we can actually rearrange it. Okay, so we just mentioned that the common denominator is 4a squared, right? So for the second fractions, I will need to multiply with 4a at the denominator, 4a at the numerator for the second fraction, and then we can combine them because right now they have the same denominator, which is 4a squared, so we can combine the numerator. Okay, so what's the next step? All right, next step is, let's do a recall. Right, so if you need to solve x squared equals to 4, right, recall that the possible values for x could be positive 2. It could be a negative 2 because negative 2 times another negative 2 gives you positive 4. So when you have x squared equals to 4, you can have 2 possible values for x, plus minus. So if x squared equals to 9, you can a possible answer for x will be plus minus 3. X squared equals to 25, then the possible values for x will be plus minus 5. All right, so let's do another recall, another note, because we need to split square root 4a squared, you know, into square root 4 times square root a squared. And square root 4 is 2. Square root a squared. Square root a squared meaning a squared meaning a times a. So square root, that will give you just a. All right, so let's continue. All right, so the next step is, you see, I'm finding the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is to solve for the values of x. So I have to make x the subject. Okay, I have to make x a subject. Hence, I need to subtract b over 2a on both sides of the equations. Okay, so this is what I get. And again, I did a rearrangement. Put the negative in front. Right, so this is our quadratic formula. So in the next slide, I will show you how we can actually apply this quadratic formula to solve quadratic equation. All right, finally, so we have done the derivations of the quadratic formula. So let's put our knowledge into practice. So this is the application time. So the questions we need to ask ourselves is that when do we use the quadratic formula? In what kind of situation do we use the quadratic formula? Let's look at an example. So if you look at an example, we ask to solve the equation 2x squared minus 3x minus 7 equals to 0. And you ask to express the answer to 2 decimal places. All right, I've highlighted these 3 words, 2 decimal places. And why do you think I highlight these 3 words? Yes, when the values of the x that you're supposed to find, when you solve the equations, means you're finding the values of x. And when this value of x is not exact, then we usually will use the quadratic formula. It's more relevant to use quadratic formula. All right, so what is the first thing we do? Yes, let's write down the quadratic formula. So this is what we have derived at the last few slides. Okay, the 2 possible answers. One is x equals to negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. You can see on the screen. And the other answer is negative b plus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, if you cannot remember this quadratic formula, you can go to the YouTube. So I think there are some nice videos that actually teach you how to remember the quadratic formula by singing it out, as a song. All right, so the next step we need to do is to write down the values for A, B, and C. Okay, so A is the coefficients of x squared, as highlighted, and B is the coefficients of x. So you need to arrange whatever quadratic equations are given to you, you need to arrange it in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Okay, so you need to arrange it in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So in this situation here, a is equals to 2, which is the coefficients of x squared, and b will be equals to negative 3, which is the coefficients of x. And finally, c would be the constant, negative 7. All right, so let's plug all these values into your formula. Right, and you can use your calculator to work this out. On the calculator, you'll be able to see the symbol to find fractions. Okay, and you just can key in, make sure the brackets are there and things like that. There's this bracket here. Right, and then another bracket here. And all this bracket. Okay, you just have to ensure that you punch all this thing, correctly into your calculator. So that will gives you 1 values for x. Right, you ask to express the 2 decimal places. So that will be 2.77. And the second value will come from the other one, which is negative 1.2655. To 2 decimal places will be negative 1.27. All right, so this is how you can actually use the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations where you need to express the answer non-exact value to a certain number of accuracy. Okay, thank you.